Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Thursday, December 29th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Peach Bowl game against Georgia in just 2 days. The game against Michigan in 331 days. We, on Wednesday, got a chance to go watch the Ohio State Buckeyes and Georgia Bulldogs practice, and we learned a whole bunch from both of those things, and Tony Gerdeman was there with me for both of them. He joins me this morning. Tony, I guess we need to start with injuries, because we don't get to watch, we don't get to watch the 11 on 11, good on good. We're not in there for any of that kind of stuff. So kind of the big takeaways from the time that we are in there is, hey, this guy's not out there. That's probably significant. And one of the, hey, this guy's not out there for Ohio State was Miyan Williams. So Miyan was supposed to be at the interviews on Tuesday, was not there, was not at practice on Wednesday. And to me, you can read that a couple of different ways.
Well, I think you read it as you hear that he's sick, or you have players saying that he's ill, and so you wanted to see how quickly because if he's back, then it's like, okay, nothing significant. But if he's not there, then it's like, well, how long does this linger? How is it more serious than just a simple illness? Like, how much subterfuge is there? How much deception, and are we blowing it all out of proportion? Perhaps we only get 15 minutes, but one of the reasons to go was to see who is there and who is not there, and the big takeaway is always who is not there and who is there.
And there were guys who were not dressed at practice. Cameron Babb was there on the sidelines, not dressed, so I would assume Cameron Babb is not playing in the Peach Bowl, but he was there. So if Miyan Williams wasn't there, and they have said, yes, he's just been a little under the weather, okay. So maybe he was just a little under the weather because if he wasn't playing, he would have been there.
Right.
That's sort of where I am with this right now, and it's just like, well, no one's been straightforward with anything, and there's conflicting information out there, so...
It wouldn't be a playoff game for Ohio State without it. I mean, think back to the last time they were in the playoffs and all of we still have people thinking back to the Zapruder film type of analysis of who's getting off the buses, who's getting off the planes, who is sick, who isn't. Is the 14-day time frame, will it just come through on the day of the game? It's like, no, you got to count one extra day. So this is much less dramatic.
And I mean, remembering back to that, I remember there was a practice that Ohio State released, and it was like the video was all like walk-ons, and people are looking in the background and trying to, is that a Chris Olave in the background behind this video of this walk-on? It's just, everyone is kind of this has turned into just a game-playing thing right now.
And I saw on the Huddle message board, somebody reminded me, or I was reminded that coming off of the plane, there was somebody that looked like Jeff Hafley. And people were like, is Jeff Hafley helping out against Alabama? And I think it was, somebody said it was one of Jerry Emmig's assistants, Ohio State SID, so maybe, I don't know if it was Mike Basford. Not that Mike is... He's the assistant two, the assistant SID, not the assistant two, but just that kind of thing. You're looking at every little grain of information that you can get, but that's when you're only fed morsels, you have to make them last. And
when there's some game playing on, we start to wonder about things that we start chasing stuff that ends up not being there. Ronnie Hickman was supposed to be at interviews on Wednesday morning. He wasn't there. Steele Chambers was there in his place. So wait, aha. So, and then Ronnie Hickman was there warming up and totally fine at practice. So who knows? So without Miyan Williams there, Dallin Hayden was running first, going through the warm-up lines. Chip Trayanum was second. I don't know how much to read into that. They made Chip Trayanum available to us in interviews and not Dallin Hayden. So you can read whatever tea leaves you want there in terms of who might be the starting running back. I would assume if they don't have Miyan Williams, you're probably going to see a decent amount of both.
Yeah, you have to. I don't know that you can just ride with one guy unless they're just not going to run the ball as much, and you can have
they might not.
And one guy carries it 16 times, the other guy carries it 2, and you throw it 52 times, and whatever happens, happens. But Yeah, I don't even know if you want to answer this yet. Like, at this point, expectations that Mayan plays, I'm below 50-50 at this point. And I don't know that that's fair. That's not based on anything. It's just when you don't see them practice, then you have to assume that they're not playing. Now, there's still time. There's still a couple of days left, like you said, but at some point you got to get out there. Now, we will, if we don't see him at media day today, Tom, what is your assessment at that point?
That he's probably sick, and now this has run into the third day, and then we're going to see on Thursday we've got media day, and then we also go see Ohio State and Georgia practice again. So, is he out there tomorrow? Is he out there later today? And there's a couple guys in Georgia that we're kind of wondering, are they going to be out there later today? This is all, everyone is kind of dealing with this same basic nonsense. So that is the Mayan Williams update. It was much more clear-cut. Matt Jones was out there. He had his ankle wrapped pretty tightly, but was out there going through stuff with, running through drills with the ones. There was one point when Enoch Vermahi was with the ones, but it was mostly Matt Jones. I would expect Matt Jones to start and play in that game.
Yeah, and I was talking with somebody else on the beat, and they're like, I didn't really see Matt Jones do anything. I'm like, well, I saw him with the ones, and I saw him do some stuff, and it's like, whenever your 2 minutes of watching something happens, and you're trying to make a full assessment, but the assessment was that he was out there, he was working. He was working with the ones, but like you said, Enoch Vermahi getting in there as well. I think that's obviously a precautionary thing. Also, you want to get Enoch Vermahi more work as that next guard in, because Matt Jones has been banged up. But the key there is that Jones is working. Looks like he is playing at this point, and so then that makes you deeper in case anything does happen.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, if you get a starter back, that is a good thing. Georgia has some of their own drama going on injury-wise. Ladd McConkey, wide receiver, one of their big targets on offense, has basically not been on the practice field as far as we are aware for like a month now, and was not out there when we were out there on Wednesday. This is a Georgia passing offense that is pretty diverse in terms of who gets targeted, but he is a big piece of that offense. If they don't have him, that feels like a fairly significant loss.
He is their number one wide receiver. He is the guy he is really their only consistent wide receiver target. And not having him, he's a reliable guy. And from people we've talked to this week covering Georgia, they don't have a lot of reliable guys. Mm-hmm. And so if you're taking away their most reliable wide receiver, or if he's not playing, then I think that is definitely significant. And maybe that allows the Ohio State defense to focus a little bit more on everybody else. But realize that these Georgia athletes are pretty good. Like, whoever they put in there is a former 4.5-star player, and don't take them lightly. But, they have not been that productive at wide receiver outside of him.
Yeah, and, we saw Brock Bowers, we saw Washington, we saw, I think several of their other kind of top wide receivers. I mean, they will have, don't worry, they'll have guys to throw the ball to. Saw Kenny McIntosh, don't worry, they'll throw him the ball. Stetson Bennett will not be standing there going, shoot, I wish someone was running around this time, but oh well, maybe next time. Don't cry for Georgia, they'll be just fine. One other thing that might be a little bit of a concern for Georgia, right tackle Warren McClendon, he also, I think he got hurt during the LSU SEC championship game, I think. He was also not out there. Now, that is maybe a little bit more of a concern for them. Anytime you're missing an offensive lineman, especially a tackle, against this Ohio State pass rush, that could potentially be, and again, we're not saying, definitely these guys are not playing. We're not saying that. But if you're not out there practicing on Wednesday and the game's on Saturday, that's probably not great news.
Well, and if you think about it, if there is a weakness there and the pass rush is coming from Stetson Bennett's right side and he has to peel back to the left side, he's less effective going to the left than he would be escaping to the right. Now, if he makes jukes and then gets out, loses the defensive line, loses contain. Now you've got an issue. But yeah, Ohio State's going to need every advantage they can find, and so that's one where again Georgia will just plug in another 4.5-star guy, and everybody expects him to do fine. You look at Ohio State when they've had to plug in another right tackle, be it Josh Fryer, like the Michigan State game, the COVID Michigan State game.
Oh, Max Ray.
Max Ray.
Yep.
Like a lot of these guys, they step up because they've been prepared well. They practice against Georgia's defensive line every day, so they come in and they are prepared to play.
Yeah, and this is no one feels sorry for Ohio State when they're missing a player. It's kind of the same thing for Georgia. It's just you recruit at the level you recruit at, and there are only like 3 schools in the nation that recruit at that level. So you got to kind of just have it be next man up and move on for both of these teams. And so we will be back at practice again later today, and may have some additional information for you in terms of who is back out there, who is not back out there. With media days, that'll be interesting as well. A good little barometer as well. But before we go, I did want to touch base with you on something that I think we all had. You and I both had the same reaction. We watched Ohio State's practice, and Ohio State's practice looked like Ohio State's practice, and it was the same stuff, and they're working on kickoffs, and they're working on whatever, and it's fine. And then we went into Georgia's practice, and boy, Georgia's practice was. It sounds like this was not a typical Georgia practice. But boy, Georgia's practice was not at all like what Ohio State's practice looked like.
It was hard to explain, but it was ramped up. It was like an aggressive warm up, and it was based on competition. And one of the interesting things, and it was just again totally warm ups. Dudes are running around hula hoops, but they're doing it 3 at a time, racing each other, and they're running through some just basic obstacle drills and things like that, keeping your feet up. Very total warm ups, but they're moving, and. Was Kirby Smart doing the microphone?
He had a microphone at one point, but there was another guy with a microphone too.
But even like before the drills, they're telling the players in line, pick the person you're going to compete against, line up so that you make sure you're competing against that person, and then beat that guy. And it kind of reminded me like the winner-loser day stuff. But like you said, I don't know that this was a typical thing. Also, I do want to caution. When we only get to watch 15 minutes, we have to make as much out of those 15 minutes as we can. It's very much like the 2 spring practices we get to watch are the least important, but we make them the most important. It's the first one and the last one. The first spring practice, the very first practice of the year. It's fun to watch. You learn a lot. It's almost meaningless by the time August rolls around. The spring game is even more meaningless, but that's the one where everybody takes their entire opinions, and they base that on their conclusions are based on that. So when we get 15 minutes and we have to base conclusions on it, this may mean absolutely nothing, but it was interesting.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting, and it was definitely, I said to you afterwards, boy, if I was basing my score prediction based solely off of the 15 minutes of practice we got to watch, I'd pick Georgia by 30. But you wouldn't base your score prediction because it's just the first 15 minutes of practice. So this probably doesn't mean anything, but it was still pretty kind of interesting.
And exactly, we walking off the field, and you're talking about it like this was different. We see what we see, and then you can see something different. And one way may be better, one may not be, or they may be equally effective. I mean, they're both in the playoffs, so they seem to be doing okay.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where we go see practices when they are playing whoever, and we got to watch Washington's practice during the Rose Bowl a few years ago. We got to watch Utah's practice during the Rose Bowl last year, and nothing ever really jumps out at you necessarily. This was one that was like Well,
also having nowhere to run to, nowhere to hide playing. At one point in the background, they probably should have had like the entire soundtrack from the Warriors playing during the entire time. But yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, so that was our Wednesday. We have again a very busy Thursday. We've got media days, which means we're going to be talking to lots of different folks and have lots of different interviews for you at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle with both the Buckeyes and the Georgia Bulldogs. And then we'll also be over at practice. The Buckeyes are practicing late this morning. Georgia practicing kind of evening on Thursday. So we will have reports out of both of those practices for you again tomorrow. And then that will be the 29th. The 30th is something. The 30th. The 30th is the head coaches press conference, and then of course the 31st the game. So we're getting close. Only 2 days away from the game, and but two busy full days of content at BuckeyeHuddle.com, and then of course we'll have a pregame show. We'll have a postgame show. All the usual stuff you are accustomed to out of us, we will do all that stuff for you as well. So make sure you check out BuckeyeHuddle.com and also YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Make sure you're subscribed to both of those because we do different stuff in both of those places, but we do a lot of stuff, and there's a lot to talk about this week. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. We'll be back, of course, with a whole bunch more coming up throughout the day at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.